So this refrain of do you want to get money or not really speaks to the concept of the whole album, but you have to listen to the whole thing to really understand what they're talking about. Go subscribe. Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Brews and Reviews. It's Knowledge, and today I'm reviewing Skyzoo's new album, All the Brilliant Things, and I am sipping on Famosa. That is a 5% lager coming from Guatemala, and I've actually had this beer in Guatemala. In fact, it's their signature beer. It's everywhere in Guatemala City, only it's called Gallo. So when I saw it here, I said, that looks just like Gallo. I gotta pick it up, and it tastes just like Gallo too. Apparently they changed the name. I did a little research, and Gallo can mean something very different. It's a slang word in some context, so they changed the name to Famosa here, but it still has the great taste that it had in Guatemala. Good lager. Let's get into this good album. Skyzoo. I think the first time that I heard him was on the Little Brother mixtape, Separate But Equal, and I was impressed with him then. And since then, he has been one of hip-hop's most consistent rappers. Solid project after solid project. I reviewed 2 of his EPs last year, Milestones and the Bluest Note, both great EPs, so I was really excited for this full-length project, and he does not cut corners on the execution of this full length. Free Jewelry, right off the bat, I recognize this sample. This was also used in Slum Village's Fall in Love off the classic Fantastic Volume 2, but the beat on this morphs into a bouncy bass line, and there's a line on this, I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. He says, "So don't mistake me, yo, I don't do this for complex, nor a pitchfork or any other facade where the culture is determined while chugging a PBR." I know what he's trying to say, but you talking about me, Zoo? You talking about me over here sipping beer? But he does say PBR. I would never drink a PBR, so nah, it can't be me. The line about Blind Fury also stuck out to me because it is from the classic Nas verse on Affirmative Action. Nice nod to him. Classic verse right there. And he's basically saying on this that he's given us free jewels, but he's introducing another concept at the same time that we'll have to listen to many more tracks for it to come together. St. James Liquors, and you know he's definitely tying a concept in because we have this same intro that we heard on the previous track with a woman singing about all this money that we can make. That definitely means something, and I'll get back to it as we hear it more through the album and what that actually means. This track specifically is one of my favorites lyrically for the personal storytelling, and he's talking about being young, sitting on a stoop, owning his craft, and witnessing greatness. He sets the year as 1995, greatest year in hip-hop history, by the way, but an even greater year for Skyzoo because at 13, he got to be around Biggie right after Ready to Die came out. And he says, "Whole hood know, but I was trying to be him in time. He wrote an album for my block. The source should have gave it a 5. Right? 13 with a view of how good a crown fit. Word to everyone I was floating around with." 13 with a view of how good a crown fit. Biggie was already the king. And Skyzoo, imagine witnessing that at 13. It's crazy. And then he also references the source, which indeed give Ready to Die 4.5 mic. And when you think about that, all these people tossing out 10s like it's nothing, a classic score should be hard to earn. And even right after a classic dropped, if somebody was going to review that, they weren't going to give it immediate classic status. Shit was hard to earn back then. Ready to Die was a 4.5. A Tour in the Neighborhood, a real jazzy piano-led beat, and this holds true to its title. It's Skyzoo talking about his neighborhood growing up. He's repping his Brooklyn home in one straight verse, but what really stands out on this is the inclusion of the Ill Al Skratch sample. No, scratch that. that. This is Ill Al Skratch repeating from their favorite song that he got to redo it here. They're from Brooklyn, so this is another nod to the borough, but it turns out these first few tracks are about what Brooklyn used to be. Rhetoric and Mark Infinite produced this track, and he's a frequent collaborator. Him and Skyzoo got a lot of chemistry, and Sky sounds really good over his beats. And I like how Zoo is just going in from the very beginning, no messing around, but he's getting right into the verse on so many of these tracks. Doing some wordplay with names, he shouts out another Brooklyn legend. He says, flip A to Z and cruise, word to a phase on, all love or whichever part that the phase on. A to Z, AZ, another great underrated classic MC from Brooklyn, and he's also representing the actor Faison Love here. So already in the first three tracks, we got a reference to Biggie, to AZ, to Ill Al Skratch, all repping Brooklyn, and it also sounds like my early teenage playlist. Bodega Flowers, despite the intro where Aria is kicking some lyrics that sound very familiar to anybody who's ever had a girlfriend, this is not really about love or giving flowers to the opposite sex. It's about showing love to those who deserve it when they're alive. And Zoo gets really complex with the lyrics. He says, then your face masks sneak off, race draft recall. Give us Larry David and y'all can take back Shameik more. Or maybe y'all just school him some, get to retooling son. Word to Miles Morales, ignoring his father's badges. There's a lot going on in these bars. First of all, it's a reference to the race draft skit, the classic and hilarious from the Chappelle Show. And I also get wanting to take or claim Larry David, who's also very hilarious and insightful at the same time, versus somebody like Shameik Moore. And at first I thought that Shameik Moore's greatest offense was that he couldn't name all the Woo, even though he's in the goddamn TV show. He could not name every Woo member. And actually that still pisses, that should be a reason to get rid of him right there. But I think that Zoo is actually referencing what he tweeted out after George Floyd's death, where he said, look, all I'm saying is in the moment when we are experiencing racism, can we, the black community, find ways to avoid being killed or hunted? And maybe he was kind of misspeaking, but it definitely seemed like he was blaming the victim. And that, sure enough, is why Skyzoo wants to give him back. But then he references his character into the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales, and him disobeying his father, who was a cop, saying maybe he could retool the kid. Something to believe in. We got a couple recognizable samples right here. This My Life, My Life, My Life. It comes from Roy Ayers, and it is so prominently used in hip hop. The first and best example, in my opinion, is when Common did it, but it's used so often that I've even referenced it in this year-old show when I reviewed the Joey Badass Project, who sampled the same thing. And then we also hear the famous Tila Rock, It's Yours sample, which of course was made famous by Nas. Humble Brag, great beat here, again by Mark Infinite, and Skyzoo has switched and got to an intricate rhyme scheme. He says, riddle me like how much a buck worth to cut work. We gonna be alright like a duck worth. It just work how much your luck worth. From where it mean more if you buck first. Bucktown, home of the original gun clappers. And he goes on to say how the gentrification of Brooklyn has actually helped the drug dealing business. He says, it'd be all right, same ones who need a Wi-Fi login, same ones that keep it booming when they're outside copping. I was supposed to be a trap rapper, not only one of the most interesting titles on the project, but also one of the standout tracks. And speaking of highly used samples, this samples the most sampled song of all time in hip hop, and that is Bob James' Nautilus. There's a YouTube series of Bob James listening to and talking about rap songs that sampled his music. That is a great great project. I might link to that in the description. Definitely check that out if you haven't seen it. And there's also a great interview of Ninth Wonder interviewing Bob James, and you can tell that Ninth really respects him as a artist. So that should tell you something about Bob James and his standing as one of the greats in hip hop culture who never actually wrote a rhyme or produced a beat. And this whole track is about the duality of Sky's style. Like he says that he is equal parts little brother and Locks. And you know he's the kind of guy that would play Ninth's beats for strippers. In other words, he's conscious and hardcore at the same time. And we get a completely unexpected actual trap beat and flow for the outro of this track. Plugs and connections, and he's referencing gentrification again. Gentrification is more white, upper middle class people moving into a traditionally lower class neighborhood, and the prices go up, the rent goes up. Brooklyn is no longer the Brooklyn of Biggie's days. And Zoo has addressed this a lot in his music, and that really seems to be the concept that's coming together for this whole project. And with this, he's kind of delivering a nuanced view of it. Even though it is ultimately a negative, he does seem to find some value in it. He says, brownstone owner offered my pops to buy the building. He was 34, a little too young to find that appealing. Now he sip a Heine and he reflect on what he left. But now he own a restaurant in Atlanta, so no regrets. But won't forget what might have been, clientele piling in, and nobody resembling nobody we out here with. Culture-ish, this is the best beat on the project and a brilliant use of horns on all the brilliant things. Again, referencing how all the white people who are now in his city want to be part of the scene or the tradition or the history of Brooklyn, the culture of hip hop, possibly, but they don't want to fully respect the people or learn the history or deal with the hard shit that may come with it. He draws a parallel showing that this attitude has been going on for a really long time. He says, and they just want to be positioned where you've been. Sort of like how they turned living single into Friends, right? It's true. Everyone noticed back in the day that Friends bit off a living single, and the creators of Friends even finally admitted it, that they stole from that show directly. Only that show with an all-black cast only lasted 5 seasons. And of course, Friends was a phenomenon that is one of the most commercially successful shows of all time, which really, in a nutshell, reiterates the point that Sky is trying to get across. When white people do things that black people did before, then it all of a sudden is more respected and accepted in society. But it's really the second verse that gets extremely deep on this. He says, 2020 vibes, I'm at the march trying to touch the sky. But notice that it takes a kill for us to come alive. I got friends with mothers like Breonna Barksdale, but we ain't crowned Breonna Taylor till her heart failed. Bed-Stuy is burning, another highlight, and I like how this album gets even better towards the end. In this day when most projects are front-loaded, I like the Zoo saved the best for last. Classic Biggie sample on this, upright bass for the rhythm, and sticking with the theme, it's about changes to his neighborhood. He says, to whom it may concern, don't let this happen to you. True to what you heard, they want this back like a loop. They gave you a curb and kept you back on the stoop. And now that they prefer is to help you pack when you move. There's also a nice reference to Do the Right Thing on this, talking about the pictures on Sal's wall. Now the album's refrain comes back. And she's saying, do you want to get money or not? And I'm finally putting this together. This is what it feels like the white, wealthier people moving in are saying to the black people who are losing their homes. It's like they're saying, let us do this. Do you want to make money or not? You can take the lead, let us copy you. We'll do what you do. There's a lot of money to be made now that we're upping the property values, now that we're bringing in all these expensive stores and shops. But with this attitude, they're really belittling the residents that have been there. So this refrain of do you want to get money or not really speaks to the concept of the whole album, but you have to listen to the whole thing to really understand what they're talking about. And then we got What Money Taught Us, which is pretty much Sky saying that he didn't follow what they were trying to do and he got money his own way. And this is a really crazy off-kilter beat with multiple elements coming in and out. And if you just listen to the beat, it sounds like it'd be really hard to rhyme to, but Sky handles it masterfully. Soft Eyes, the last track, smooths it out, and Zoo says, so last year I was writing my retirement speech, looking back at all the grounds that I'd aspired to reach. I called Phonte and we kicked it for an hour or three. Brotherly love, he put a little fire under me. Phonte actually responded to these lyrics saying that he didn't even know that he helped Skyzoo in that way. But we are glad that he did. Thank you, Tigolo. We appreciate that. By the way, when's the next collab coming between you and Zoo? This is a great album. Everything comes together perfectly. These are some of the best jazz produced beats that I've heard on a hip hop album in a few years. Skyzoo's voice and cadence mesh with them so well, and you might not notice how great his flow is over these because it sounds so natural, but he's doing some really technically difficult things to match these beats. And I love how the concept came together and unfolded track after track. This is his love for Brooklyn and also his way to cope with what's happening to it. It's also been a few years since we heard an artist execute a concept lyrically so well. I'm giving All the Brilliant Things a 9 out of a 12 pack. Thank you for watching my review of Skyzoo's All the Brilliant Things. If you like this, go ahead and hit like now and hit me up in the comments. If you didn't like it, also hit me up in the comments. I drop hip hop and hops related content consistently, so subscribe to my channel now. And until I see you next time, keep buzzing. Other man says subscribe.
But if he's on his channel saying that somebody's album is better than mine, unsubscribe to that motherfucker.
No, your album's the best, man.
There you go. Subscribe.
Yeah.
Subscribe.